I am now. Thank you, thank you. All right, so we did not do muscles or nervous system, all right. But we did cartilage and bone and all that. All right. All right, let's start with muscles. Okay, well, this is the easy part. All right. So the last two types of tissue in the body are muscle tissue and nervous tissue. Okay? For muscle tissue, there are three types of muscle. The first one is listed up here, skeletal muscle. Okay, a couple of things that you want to know about it. All right, is one, it is striated. You can see the striations here, the stripes. This is one single muscle cell, by the way. They're long and cylindrical, and there's many nuclei all throughout. Okay, this type of muscle cell, it does not branch. Okay. Cardiac muscle cells do, but skeletal muscles do not. Skeletal muscle is voluntary, which means you can control it. Okay? You can consciously, much like how you're taking notes right now, that is skeletal muscle. Okay? Cardiac muscle, you can't do that. So there's the previous slide was the nuclei. Here are the striations, the stripes. Okay? All right, so where do we find it? Skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles attached to bone, skin, other structures.
I forgot to ask this, but do we have to spell do we all have to spell the stuff on the atlas, or do we have to spell anatomical terms?
For certain things, yes. Like if it's lung, you have to tell me if it's the right or left lung.
Right, but I'm talking about history.
Yep. Yep. You'll be asked those terms too.
Do you know how to spell it though?
Yes, like posterior, anterior, yeah. I mean, I would use the easier ones. I mean, I wouldn't use unless you like ventral and dorsal, but you can use posterior, anterior, ventral, dorsal. Can't say back or front. Yeah, you'll lose points for that. Okay. Right. Yeah, go with the easy stuff. All right, here's your cardiac muscle tissue. It too is striated. Okay, but it'll branch. What I mean by that is you can see here's one cell and it kind of branches off this way and it branches off that way. It's kind of like taking the letter Y and laying it on its side. Okay? So cardiac muscle is similar to skeletal muscle in that they're both striated. They'll both have more than one nuclei. Cardiac muscle can have 1 to 2 nuclei per cell. Okay? But it also has, the striations here, but also these structures here, these dark, thicker lines. Those are called intercalated discs. Intercalated discs are where you'll find what we call gap junctions and desmosomes. And that, I think I told you guys that last class, it allows for the electrical current to flow through the muscle tissue. So when you're doing an EKG, okay, ECG, I should say, the electrocardiogram, that big wave thing that you'll see, kind of goes like this. Oh, looks like this. Okay, that's an ECG, electrocardiogram, and it's basically monitoring the electrical current that's passing through your cardiac tissue. Okay, it's the conduction system of your heart, and these structures here help with that conduction. Okay. All right, where do you find it? Only one place, the heart, specifically the myocardium. That's the middle layer of the heart. It's where all heart muscle hangs out. All right, and cardiac muscle is different from skeletal muscle in that it's involuntary. You can't control it. Okay, you can't slow your heart down mentally. Be like, all right, stop beating for 3 minutes. I want to take a break. You can't do that. Okay, smooth muscle. We call it smooth muscle because there's no striations here. Okay, you do not see a single striation. Where do we find it? In the tissue walls of several organ systems. All right, for example, in the stomach, in your small and large intestines. You'll even find it in the middle layer of your blood vessels, and that allows for your blood vessels to get really big or really small. You'll also find it in the middle layer of the uterus, okay, the myometrium. Okay, So there's a lot of places. And again, this type of muscle tissue is also involuntary. Okay? You can't stop your small intestines from pushing food into or towards the large intestine. It's called peristalsis. You can't prevent that. It takes drugs that can help to prevent that, but your brain, you cannot. All right. And then we've got our nervous tissue. Okay? So there's two types of cells that you're seeing here in this picture. These kind of spidery looking ones, those are your neurons. Okay, the neurons, those are the ones that they transmit information, receive information, they conduct electrical impulses. Right? And then you got your glial cells. These are the support cells. Help to nourish, repair, take care of the neurons. Okay? Which one, glial?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what page that's on. Guys, what page? 8. Page 8. Thank you, everybody at home. Glial, G-L-I-A-L. Okay, and there are your neurons. So you can see these little spiky structures coming off. Those are the dendrites. Those are just these processes to help receive and transmit information. And where do you find nervous tissue? Booyah. Brain, spinal cord, and nerves. Central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. All right, that's it for tissue. Woo, big relief. There's a lot of information in there, but we're going to go over again some of that in whoops, I didn't want that. In lecture again. All right, let's do a little bit of the skin here, and then I want to get all the labeling for the skin done today. We might have to do a little bit of the PowerPoints. What's today? Today's Tuesday on Thursday. I keep forgetting that today's Tuesday. I feel like Monday. Okay, so let's talk about Chapter 6, the integument, which is our skin. Okay? Now you can see there's a lot of structures here. The integument system, first of all, your skin, there's another name for your skin. And it's called the cutaneous membrane. There's 4 membranes in your body. We learned about the first one in Chapter 1, the serous membranes. Okay, those are the membranes that line your body cavities. They have 2 layers, the parietal and the visceral layer. Okay, here's the second one. The skin, the integument, is the largest organ in your body. Okay, just to show you, and again, you'll see the slide in a couple other places, especially more in lecture. But again, when we talk about the skin, we'll go through the different layers. All right, you have the epidermis and the dermis, so the outer layer and the inner layer. Then the epidermis is broken down into 4 to 5 sublayers. And your dermis, it gets broken down into your papillary layer and your reticular layer. Now you'll see this layer here, the subcutaneous layer, that's not a part of the integument system. Do not be fooled. That's a great true-false question that I've seen it asked on almost every single test. Okay, so the subcutaneous layer is not part of the skin. It's not part of the integument. It's just this layer of adipose and areolar connective tissue. It sits right below your skin. Okay? But if you look here at the skin, you can see, look at all these structures inside. Your skin has all 4 tissue types. Okay? It's got muscle. All right? It's got epithelium. Okay? It's got connective tissue all through here. All right? And it also has nervous tissue. So it has all 4 tissue types of your body. Okay, remember the 4 tissue types are epithelial, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. Skin's got it all. Okay, we'll get into this in more detail. Let's get down to some of this stuff here. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I was looking through the recording, and it was on one side it said that the visceral on the outside, and then on the other side it just said the visceral on the inside. So I'm confused.
Yeah. viscera is another word for organs. So when we talk about the visceral layer is always immediately surrounding the organ. So it will be on the inside. Yeah. All right. So epidermis. This is the outer layer of your skin. Okay. It's primarily made up of stratified squamous epithelium. You guys remember about keratinized? What did I say? What's the saying you put on a t-shirt? Keratin kills. That's right. So if you have keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, you get dead skin cells. Okay? Keratin is that protein that helps to make a cell tough. It toughens it up. But in the process of making the keratin, the cell kills itself. So you have 5 layers, all right, of epithelium, in the epidermis. All right, we're going to go from deep to superficial. We also call those layers strata. All right. So I always remember that the first one, the stratum basale. Now, just to let you folks know too, so you don't think I'm an idiot at home. All right. I pronounce it basale so you know that there's a silent E because spelling counts. Okay. Correct pronunciation is stratum basale. All right, but B is the bottom layer. Remember the basal surface? All right. So the bottom layer of the epidermis is the stratum basale. Then we're going to go from deep to superficial, and the stratum corneum is the most superficial layer. Okay? This layer here is only present in thick skin. You need to know that. Where do you find thick skin? Give me a guess. Palms. Where else? Heels, bottom of your feet. All right, those 2 places are where we're going to find the thick skin. All right, so you'll have all 5 layers in thick skin in those regions. All right, but on the back of your neck, the back of your hands, that's thin skin, so you will not have this layer. The stratum lucidum is not present there. Okay, we'll talk more about it. These last 3 layers here, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum, and the stratum corneum, all right, those are dead cells. Okay? The stratum basale, stratum spinosum, and then stratum granulosum, that's when the cells start to kill themselves. So there's a mixture between living cells and dead cells in the stratum granulosum. Okay? We're gonna go into that in more detail here. So let's talk about the first layer here. That's the deepest layer. That's the stratum basale. Okay, because remember, how do we name stratified epithelium? By the appearance of what layer? The top layer, the apical layer, right? The outside, most superficial layer. So you see here at the stratum basale here, it talks about, one, it's a single layer, but the epithelium is cuboidal to low columnar. Okay? But when you look at the top layer, all right, they're squamous shaped. So that's how we name it. Okay? So there's 3 cell types that we find here. The predominant one, which is the keratinocytes. And then you got melanocytes and tactile cells. What do you think melanocytes do? Yeah, make melanin. That's what makes some people darker than others. Okay? And then the tactile cells, these are cells that help with your nervous system for touch. Okay? All right, so let's talk about the first type, keratinocytes. All right? You'll find these cells in all layers of the epidermis. Okay? So what will happen is that a keratinocyte in this layer, it'll divide, all right? One cell stays, and the other cell migrates to the next layer, okay? So you'll always have one cell that stays, and the other cell will then move to the superficial surface, okay? And their job is to do this, make keratin. That's it. That's all they do. And in the process of making keratin, it's going to make your epidermis stronger, so it doesn't tear like paper, like tissue paper, okay? So you'll have these stem cells in the stratum basale that are dividing. One stays in that layer to divide again, and the other one moves on. That's simple, okay? The other cell type are the melanocytes. These guys are really cool, all right? Like Heather said, they make melanin, okay? And as you know, all right, melanin is made in response to ultraviolet radiation from the sun. There's ultraviolet A and ultraviolet B, all right? It responds to both. They're both bad, but B is considered to be the really bad one, all right? And it's really, really cool because what happens, all right, is that melanin gets produced and the cells will then coat the nucleus with the melanin. And its job is to shield and protect the DNA. Your DNA, all right, is what? What's DNA? Yeah, it's our genetic makeup. It's the blueprint to what makes us us, okay? So all that information is stored in each cell. It's awesome. So your cell coat the nucleus with melanin to protect it from getting damaged, because if it wasn't for that, ultraviolet radiation creates which are called dimers. They literally will split. Yeah, they also give you wrinkles too. Just to let you know, not too long ago, the FDA classified going to the tanning bed as the equivalent as ingesting cyanide. Just saying, right? So, I went to a tanning bed once. I spent 5 seconds in there, and I got sunburn. All right, maybe a little bit longer than 5 seconds, 2 minutes. But anyways, I was going to Hawaii. What do you expect? So, what happens is, all right, you have these granules called melanosomes. They'll make the melanin, and then they share it with the surrounding cells, mainly our keratinocytes. Okay, and so they protect the DNA inside the nucleus from getting dimerized or split. Because when you start splitting DNA, and when your body and the cells start to copy the DNA, kind of going to what you were saying before, you get these imperfect cells being made, or whatever proteins that you're going to be making, and there's a problem. All right, the third type of cell are the tactile cells. We call those Merkel cells. All right, again, tactile is touch, so they have to do with touch. So basically what happens when these cells experience pressure, they release a chemical. And that chemical is going to stimulate the nerve endings and send a signal to your brain that you just touched something. Okay, so pressure, light touch. Okay, they're very sensitive to things. But there's not a lot of them in that layer there. All right, yes, sir.
So doesn't the, like you were saying, the melanocytes,
Melanocytes, yep.
they have to do with like you being tan or not tan? Like, it's an effect from
Correct,
that.
correct, right.
So what is it exactly that makes you tan? If it's like covering the nucleus, is it because it's covering the nucleus? Is it like it's on the color?
Well, part of that is, I mean, that's where it's gonna be covering the nucleus. But here's the thing: all of us have the same exact number. Everybody, I won't say in the world, but pretty much has the same number of melanocytes. It's just that some people's melanocytes do a very good job. Like mine are horrible. All right, my melanocytes, they don't produce a lot of melanin. Okay, so that's why I have a lighter complexion. All right, someone like Denzel Washington, all right, he has more melanocyte production of melanin, so he'll have a darker skin tone. So what that is just how much, you know, me, I'm not producing enough, so I'll have very little. And that's why, I mean, I have freckles, and those are areas of my skin that are producing ample amounts of melanin, and then the areas in between the freckles, those areas are not. So it really has to do with how much melanin you're producing. All right, so where you're thinking, I can, you know, I don't know if you're thinking this, but you're wondering, someone like myself, am I even producing enough to protect the nucleus? Yes, because you can't see outside the cell. It's just that I'm not creating enough to darken my overall skin tone, but I'm creating enough to protect the nucleus. Someone that's an albino, no, not so much, because they don't have any melanin. Okay. All right, so the second layer, all right, it's called the stratum spinosum. So now the keratinocytes that we're dividing in the stratum basale, the one that gets pushed into this layer, now starts to take on this, what we call a polygonal shape. And so that's kind of like, well, it's a horrible drawing, but it's kind of like that. All right. So it's not a polyhedral in any shape, but it's starting to transition into an irregular shape, kind of like cuboidal cell. Okay. So the cell has migrated into this area here. All right. So at this point, this is kind of really cool because these cells, now that they're done dividing, okay, they move into the second layer. They're going to start to make connections with one another. They're going to start to attach themselves to one another. So they're going to create these desmosomes. Remember we were telling you, we have these junctions in between cells. That's why epithelium is so tightly knit together or attached to one another. So it'll create these intracellular junctions called desmosomes. And that's where those intermediate fibers that we were talking about in the cells come into play, because they're essentially the thread that holds the cells together. So now, and this is also what allows us to see, all right, you have to understand, our skin is not waterproof, all right? There's proof in that when you spend an hour in a tub and you get out of the tub and your skin's wrinkly, okay? It's water resistant, it's just not waterproof, okay? So, but what adds to that water resistance are these desmosomes, these tightly held cellular junctions, all right? Now, again, one of the coolest cells that you'll find in the skin are these guys, the epidermal dendritic cells, right? They're also called Langerhans cells, all right? These guys can serve a couple of different roles. You'll learn about this next semester. They're part of the classification. They're a white blood cell, okay? And one of their roles is called an APC, which is an antigen-presenting cell. And they're a cell that will find a foreign protein. It could be a virus, part of a virus, part of a bacteria. They'll find it, and they might show it to another white blood cell, or they'll just kill it. A majority of skin cancer is killed by these cells. When I say that, you're always accumulating abnormal cells in your body, all right? Perfect example for anybody, well, this only applies to some members of this class. If you've got a pap smear, and sometimes you'll get on your pap smear results abnormal cells found. Well, that happens all the time. I hate to tell you this. I'm not talking about just the cervix, but when cells divide, sometimes you get abnormal growth of cells. And a lot of those times, those cells will kill themselves off. They know they're abnormal, and they kill themselves off. All right, but in some cases they don't. Those cells can progress to cancer. All right, well, a lot of these cells here, these dendritic cells, will find some of these abnormal cells, not necessarily quite made it to cancer, but they're like, there's something wrong with that cell, they kill it. So they help to prevent, all right, skin cancer or certain occurrences of skin cancer from getting out of control, I should say. All right, the third layer, stratum granulosum. Okay, not a very thick layer, 3 to 5 layers of keratinocytes, all right? But this is where the cell starts to kill itself, right here, okay? It starts to undergo the process of keratinization, and they start to fill themselves up with the keratin. So as the cell fills up with keratin, it starts to kill some of the organelles inside the cell, eventually the nucleus, and without the nucleus, the cell will not survive, okay? And so at this point, these cells are considered to be dead. So this process starts to occur in the third layer, all right, stratum granulosum. All right. This is a special layer. Remember this layer here, stratum lucidum, it's only present in thick skin, okay? Thick skin. Make a note of that, please. That's an easy question. That's an easy point. Okay, so palms and the soles of your feet. Okay, and so at this point, during the as these cells are filling up with the keratin, all right, they start to, and I don't know why we always mention this, but I'll still do it. It makes this translucent protein called a lectin, which is just an intermediate protein that's made during the keratinization process. Okay. And that's all you'll hear me talk about a lead. You think it'd be much more, woo, wow, but that's it. All right, and then the final layer, the Mac Daddy, the big one, is the stratum corneum. All right, this is the biggest, or the thickest layer, I should say. Be up to 20 to 30 layers thick. All right, at this point, all the cells are dead. Okay, and these keratinocytes, all right, have these tight junctions formed between themselves. Okay, So it's a relatively dry surface here on this layer, which is great because that makes it a hostile environment for certain bacteria to grow in, okay? So you want to make your skin, which is the largest membrane in your body, largest organ in your body, a hostile environment to pathogens. So the fact that it's relatively dry, all right, helps to make it that much more of a hostile environment, okay? So it definitely helps with infection. And of course, since it's 20 to 30 layers, if you, like my dog jumped on the bed today and she scratched me, I wasn't bleeding, but she definitely scraped off, you know, several of those stratum corneum cells. If it was only one cell layer thick, there'd be a problem. All right, so you look here at this next picture here, you can see, all right, all this is the dermis down in here, all right, but this is the epidermis. You can barely, well, I'll zoom in, hold on. So down here, all right, you can see here's some melanin, this kind of darkish brown substance here. But your first layer, that's the stratum basale right here. And then your stratum spinosum is right in through here. Okay, but I wanted to just show you, all right, that where the melanin is down deep in here. There we go. And you can see the drawing in here. This is our first layer, the stratum basale with the keratinocytes. And then we've got our tactile cells here. Once there's any type of pressure placed on it, they release that chemical that will stimulate the nerve ending here. And then you've got your melanocytes, these little brownish looking guys. And they'll just make melanin and they'll share it with the cells in the immediate area there. Okay? They just share all throughout. Then we've got our Langerhans cells, all right, the epidermal dendritic cell that's going around and checking the cells in its immediate vicinity for any type of irregular growths, any type of irregular cell surface markers there, all right? Or even if there's a virus that happens to make it in there or bacteria, if you scrape or cut yourself, it's infiltrated, they'll work on trying to kill it. All right, so a couple different things that we notice on the epidermis. One is its thickness, all right? Also the color and the skin markings, all right? So know the difference between thick and thin skin and where to find it. This is an important understanding that I need you to understand. Important concept that I need you to understand. One, right? Thick skin is found on your palms and the soles of your feet. It has all 5 layers, so it includes that stratum lucidum. Not only that, right? But on the palms of your hands, and you can look, right? You shouldn't have any hair follicles there. All right, you should not have hairy palms. If you do, you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. All right, and you have hair on your hands, and when you have hair, and here's the thing you got to understand: certain glands, all right, are associated with hair follicles. Sebaceous glands are these such glands. Okay, so keep that in mind, and I'll show you when we start doing the labeling. You'll see. All right, I'll show you a sebaceous gland. It's pretty much like this cluster of like low-hanging grapes that sit on a hair follicle. And it produces what we call sebum, all right? And it's this oily, viscous material that helps to give, and some people that haven't washed their hair in a while, it gives their hair a greasy appearance, right? But that's just the sebum there. It's there to help moisten and lubricate the hair, all right? So if there's no hair follicles, there's not going to be any sebaceous glands. So keep that in mind, okay? So you'll have sweat glands, because I'm sure we all at one point have had sweaty feet or sweaty palms, all right? So we can tell that there is an existence of sweat glands, but just no hair follicles or sebaceous glands in thick skin. Well, thin skin, all right, it does not have the stratum lucidum, but it does have hair. Look at the back of your arms, all right? Even your face, that peach fuzz, that's hair. So you should have sebaceous glands there. All right, so people are like, oh, my face is oily. That's actually a good thing. If your face is not oily and it's dry a lot all the time, your sebaceous glands aren't working, and that could be an issue. You could be having, that could be a condition, I won't say condition, I hate to use that term, people freak out, but you could have something going on, all right, that shouldn't be happening, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, so you'll have sweat glands, hair follicles, and sebaceous glands in the areas of thin skin. So you can see here, this picture here is showing us, you can see here's a thick skin over here. Look how many layers of that stratum corneum that you have compared to the thin skin. Okay, very little. So this is the epidermis. All this is the epidermis here. That's not a lot. All this is the epidermis here in thick skin. Okay.
So what causes acne?
What causes acne?
The sebaceous glands.
Sebaceous glands will definitely, you'll just get the bacterial infections and whatnot. What happens is some of the sweat pores will get clogged up too, and the bacteria get trapped down in there. And it's like, oh, you're closing the door so I can do whatever I want in here? No problem. You know, and they'll just go to town. Yep. All right. So remember some of the variations we said about epidermis. All right. Thickness is one. Skin color is another one. Okay. Three things that contribute to your skin color is how much blood flows to that area. Hemoglobin. That's the iron-containing protein that carries your respiratory gases, namely oxygen. Okay. So basically, if you have a lot of hemoglobin, all right, that's bound with oxygen, your blood will appear bright red. Well, I should say, yeah, bright red. It's when it's mixed with carbon monoxide that it's cherry red. All right, but bright red will the blood will appear. That's why if you ever cut yourself, you have to look at your veins. You're like, oh, I got blue blood. That's deoxygenated blood. Doesn't mean there's no oxygen there. It just means it has very low levels, and so it gives you that blue appearance. All right, through your skin. But every time you cut yourself, it's always coming out red. Why is that? Oxygen in the air, and then, so it's immediately getting exposed to oxygen. All right. So the hemoglobin will contribute to part of your skin color. Melanin, we talked about that. Okay, no need to talk about that, but we will talk about albinoism. That's when you do not have any melanin production going on. All right. So you'll see that if you've ever seen an albino, all right, or albino rats, they got red eyes. All right. What gives us the iris of our eye, its eye color, is melanin. What gives our hair its hair color is melanin, right? It just varies, okay? So, and the same thing with your skin. If you have no melanin production going on in your skin will appear very light white, okay? All right, keratin. I used to work with this guy at Red Lobster. Has anyone here ever seen the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? The Oompa Loompas? You guys remember them? The orange-colored skin people? Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. Well, this guy used to do spray tans a lot. He used to get spray tans. In spray tanning, they use keratin, all right, the safe alternative for coloration for your skin. And I don't think wherever he was going, they were using way too much keratin because his skin was orange. I swear to you, it was the darndest thing. But you also carrots, all right. So some people, depending on what their diet is, and you can tell if they're eating certain vegetables or whatever it is in their diet that has high levels of keratin, it can affect the color of their skin. All right, spray tanning for that guy was one of them. For just the actual chemical keratin?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure. I know that it's affiliated with vitamin A, and I know with vitamin A will help with vision, and we'll talk about that in chapter 16 with retinol, but I'm not sure if the keratin has anything to do with that. That one I'm not quite sure. All right, so here you can kind of see, and I was briefly discussing this before with the melanocyte. You can see here's the melanocyte, and it has the melanosomes, and it's just sharing the melatonin that's made with any cells that are in its approximate vicinity here. And that's essentially what it does. All right, it likes to share what it's making. All right, so the skin markings, one of the last variations to the epidermis. All right, you've heard of some of these structures. I even mentioned my situation with the freckles. All right, mole, actually the medical term is a nevus here. These are just a small localized growth of melanocytes. All right, that's what gives most moles a darker coloration there, and they're benign. All right, but you always need to have those checked, especially when you get older, because constant and repeated ultraviolet radiation exposure, sunlight, can cause that benign nevus to transition into a malignant carcinoma. All right, so that's why it's always important to have those checked. Freckles, like I was saying, it's just the localized areas. Some of the melanocytes in my body, all right, or those of you that have freckles, are just working better than others, okay? So, and you'll get these spots that pop up. Mostly brown, but also you can have yellow coloration there. Mangiomas, have you ever seen that on little babies, little kids? They'll have little spots there, And again, it's another benign type of tumor, but it's from blood vessels. Okay, and it causes discoloration of the skin there. Okay, friction ridges, easy. This one's easy. Look at your fingertips. Those are friction ridges. We'll talk about this, but this is where your epidermis, your outer skin layer, is going to interact with your dermis. And that's what gives you the fingerprints. Okay? I'll talk more about that probably in the lecture. All right, let's get to the second layer here. No, I'm going to stop here and just let's do some labeling, you guys. How about that? Let's give your brains a break. I think this is a good spot to stop. I love talking about the dermis, but we'll get a break. I know. It's all right, Gracie. You'll be all right. All right. Let's finish up tonight with just some easy, mind-numbing labeling. So break out your lab atlas. Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. Now, some of the colors of the structures on my slides might be a little bit different than the actual colors in your lab atlas. And what I mean by that is not major colors, but certain areas that will appear white may appear yellow in yours. Okay, so if we run into that, I'll let you know. All right, so let's start off with the first one here. So you can see this bracket here, all right, is displaying the epidermis in both thin skin and thick skin. All right, so this line, you can check your atlas. It appears white on the slide, but it might look yellow in your book. All right, again, that's just the transition from through the printings and whatnot. Okay, but if you notice here in thick skin, all right, we don't see any hair. This is a hair. Okay, when it's above the skin like that, that's just the hair. Okay, so we don't see that in the thick skin. I mean, you do have a sweat gland here, all right, with the sweat duct, all right, but we don't have any hair or sebaceous glands. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, we're going to go through the layers here. So this outermost layer here, that's the stratum corneum. And so it would also be this layer over here. That's the stratum corneum. All right, so this next layer, it's white in my slide, but yellow probably in your book. That's the stratum lucidum. Again, that's the only that's only found in thick skin. It's that white layer right there. Okay. Right below that layer, we see the stratum granulosum. All right. That's where our keratinization starts to take place. All right. Then right below that, the stratum spinosum is this kind of, I don't know, like light brown area here. Stratum granulosum is about 3 to 5 cell layers thick. This one varies here. All right, but this is where all those new keratinocytes migrated into, okay? And they start to mature. Yeah, granulosum. What page is this on, guys? 9, page 9. All right, so there's the stratum, this kind of darkish, it looks, I don't know, black to me. Okay, here's the spinosum, this lighter brown. And way at the bottom, it's 1 cell layer thick. This black and yellow line is highlighting that. The stratum basale. And it's 1 cell layer thick. Okay, so that's the outer layer, the epidermis. Okay, so now we're going to go to the deeper layer, okay, which is referred to as the dermis. So this area right here, that's the epidermis. I'll just put an E there. So right below that is the dermis. Now the dermis is made up of 2 layers, okay? 2 layers. We didn't talk about that because you guys wouldn't let me. Okay, there we go. Here's the outer, or the, excuse me, this is the more superficial of the dermal layers, all right? We call it the papillary layer, all right, or the dermal papillary layer. So it's kind of got these, you know, these ridges here. So the dermal papillary layer is kind of like this, all right? So wherever this bracket is, you can see these kind of bumps here. There's a name for those bumps, all right? The lower layer, okay, it's pretty much from here down to the subcutaneous layer. The bigger of the 2 layers, that's the dermal reticular layer. That's where we find the stuff. Sweat glands, hair follicles, some nervous tissue in there, smooth muscle, all right, blood vessels. You want to know this because I've seen it asked on the test. The connective tissue that is abundant in this layer is dense, irregular connective tissue. Okay? So dense, irregular connective tissue is the predominant type of connective tissue found in this layer, in the reticular layer. In the papillary layer, it's areolar connective tissue. I've seen those asked on test questions before. So I thought I'd give you a heads up. All right, so that's the reticular layer. So here are the bumps. You don't have this slide, but you can still point to it. All right, this is just a different angle. All right, so all these little bumps. So again, when you're taking the lab test, see if there's any words, okay? Because there might be words on that question, and it might say, name this bump, all right? If there's not, usually it wants the layer, okay? So make sure that there's not words associated with the question. Okay, so inside, and I'll try to show it here, it's kind of circled. Inside each of these papilla are blood vessels, okay? Capillaries and whatnot. Those are referred to as the papillary plexus. And they're just blood vessels. Because remember, blood vessels love to occupy loose connective tissue. Areolar connective tissue is one of the 3 types of loose connective tissue. Can anyone name me another loose connective tissue that begins with an A? And you can see it in this picture. And for you at home, you can play along. Begins with an A. That's right. Booyah. Adipose. Good job. Yep, and that's right here. That's adipose. So adipose is another form of the loose connective tissue. Areolar is loose connective tissue. All right. Here, again, you can call this layer either the subcutaneous layer or the hypodermis. Please, if you forgot it from earlier, this is not part of the integument. Okay? The subcutaneous layer is not part of your skin. We just talk about it here because it's in close proximity to it. But it's not part of the integument. Don't be fooled by that. You want to know both names. Hypodermis, which means below the dermis, right? Or subcutaneous layer. And think about it. I mean, your skin is also a cutaneous membrane. So this is the layer that's sub or beneath that. Okay? All right. So what we're seeing here, again, if this asks you the type of tissue, that's going to be adipose. That yellow, these are all lipids. All right. I don't think you guys have this in your book. Do you? You do have that picture. All right, that's what I thought. All right. So this structure here, all right, this is a Meissner's corpuscle or a tactile corpuscle. Remember we talked about tactile cells in the epidermis. Well, guess what? You've got some tactile receptors here in your dermis. And you can either call it a Meissner's corpuscle or a tactile corpuscle. And that's this whitish structure here. And it responds to touch, pressure, okay?
You said it's a receptor?
It is yes, it's a receptor. All right. Here you can see it. I'll blow it up a little bit. There you can see it on your other models here. So you'll see it in some of these pilla here. Okay. Those are those Meissner's corpuscles there. Good so far? Okay. I know it's a lot. But think, once we complete this labeling, that's it. That's all you have to know for your first lab exam. So you can start to really focus on going over that material. What's today? Tuesday? So you have Monday and Tuesday of next week, that window there to take the test. Okay? You just have to complete the test before 11:59 on Tuesday, the second day. All right? So you're given 48 hours to take the test. And then you have to give me at least 7 days to grade the test, because I have to hand grade everything. So it's all good. All right. So the next type of neurological structure that we're going to look at is this guy right here. All right. Now you can see this one's down way deep. All right. This is a Pacinian corpuscle, or also known as a lamellated corpuscle, because it's got layers. All right. You know what else has layers? Ogres. You guys ever notice that? Ogres. You ever seen Shrek? Like an onion. I'm testing people's movie knowledge. Yes. Ogres and onions have layers. Guess what? So does a Pacinian corpuscle or a lamellated corpuscle. If I zoom in on it, you can see there's all these little lines around it, these little swirly lines. Okay. Pardon? Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm dating myself when I say this. This is a commercial that used to be on Saturday mornings. It was for Tootsie Roll Pops. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop? I mean, that was old. It was back in the early 80s. Sorry. All right, here we go. The next one here is the only muscle that you need to know on this test, aside from the muscle tissue types, skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. But this guy right here, okay, that's called the erector pili muscle, and this is the muscle that's responsible for giving you goosebumps, or what we call sometimes goose flesh. Okay, so you step into a cold room or whatever, you get these little bumps on your skin. It's because that muscle is contracting and it's pulling up on the hair follicle here that it's attached to. All right, so it's the erector pili muscle. And make sure that you label it. All right, you don't have to spell out the whole word muscle. You can just put M period, and that's fine. And that's for the muscle test also. When you take the lab exam where you have to identify the muscles, don't write out, it'll mark it wrong, but I won't. You know, if you write out the whole word muscle, okay, you just write M period and leave it at that, okay? But if you write it out muscle, you just make my job harder. That's all. All right, next structure is, and we'll talk about glands when we do tissues, I believe, chapter 5. All right, this is the first type. It's called an apocrine gland. Okay, and basically, what this type of gland is we refer to it as a tubule gland. So the gland looks like that, but it looks like that it's all circled only because we coiled it up. Okay, so the apocrine gland, these types of glands are associated with hair. So you'll find them in your armpits, you'll find them in your pubic area, you'll find them anywhere, all right? Usually, I shouldn't say with just hair in general, no, but it's going to be mainly in the axillary region, in the pubic region. And I can't remember now off the top of my head if it's found around the anus. I could be wrong, but let's not go there. I don't want to talk about that. All right, apocrine glands. That's a big yellowish gland that you're seeing there. Okay. The other type of gland are the merocrine glands. These glands, all right, are just regular sweat glands. Okay, and they are not associated with hair. Even though on this drawing over here it looks like it is, it's not. That's just where it happens to line up. Okay, merocrine glands are all over the place. They're in thick skin, thin skin. Okay. Those are those smaller white glands there. The majority of what they excrete is water, sweat. Okay. Here's the sebaceous gland. This is the self-destruction gland. Well, I'll explain in a different day why that is. But it's this lobulated gland that hangs off, all right, and it's in close vicinity to a hair follicle. So it's making this sebum here, and it just sprays it onto the hair follicle, and it pushes it out all along the hair. Okay, it gives it that. It acts one as a lubricant, but two, it acts as a microbacterial acidal agent. It'll kill bacteria. All right, so it actually does two things. It helps to keep your hair nice and greasy, but moisturized, I should say. But it also helps to kill microbes. All right, so if you see anything above this line, that's above the surface of the skin, all right, that looks like that, that's a hair shaft. You can only call it a hair shaft if it's outside of the skin. Okay, if it's underneath the skin, we're going to call it something different. Okay, hair shaft. In the book, it also refers to it as a pilus, P-I-L-U-S. That just refers to the whole individual hair itself. Don't write that as an answer. Call it the hair shaft. Okay? All right. So now we're underneath the skin, and we refer to that as the hair root. So in this picture here, that is a cross section of the hair, and that is the hair root. Almost done. All right. So now at the bottom of the hair follicle, way down here, much like a tulip, if you've ever planted tulips, there's a bulb at the bottom of the tulip. This is the hair bulb. Okay? So that's that elongated area that kind of bulges out. Okay? That is the hair bulb right there. So inside the hair bulb, you can see some blood vessels. Okay? Where they all kind of coil around here. This is where the arteriole and the venule create like a capillary bed, right? We call it hair papilla. Right above the hair papilla, this is the hair matrix. That is the active growth area. So as your hair gets longer, right, those cells are actively growing in that area. It pushes your hair up and out of your body. Okay? That happens H-E-R-E here in the hair matrix. Okay? Yep.
So why do you may not know this, why do you have to like have the part of your body where you get it shaven to get a tattoo?
Oh, well, yeah. What you talking about? They shave the hair off of there. Part of that is just ease of access for the tattoo artist. Okay, and when you do that, all right, you're actually going to. And I don't know if I talked about it. I think I stopped talking about it in class. But anyways, when you get a tattoo, they're going to the ink goes down through all 5 layers of the epidermis. It does not go. It shouldn't go any deeper into the. In some cases, you know how some places in a tattoo where it bleeds. For those of you that have ever had a tattoo, that's because they've gotten down into the dermis area there and they've broken some blood vessels. But when they shave it, it's really just for the ease of the tattoo artist there. All right, this line here is outlining, all right, the hair follicle. We've taken the hair follicle, we've cut it in half, all right? And so what this black yellow line is, which is this dark purplish line here above it, that's the hair follicle. So it's like on my shirt, my sleeve is my hair follicle, my hair would be my arm, okay? So that kind of thing. The hair follicle just covers the hair. So you see on this slide here, I don't know what color that looks like to you, like a grayish color. All right, this whole grayish structure, all right, that's the hair follicle. And that's it. So you guys, we finished the skin for labeling. If you have questions, shoot. I need someone to stay behind with me at class today to help me clean the desktops. All right. And make sure that you sign the lab sign-out sheet. Okay. Anybody at home, any questions for me? Okay. If not, I will see you folks in class on Thursday. Okay? I'm going to stop recording here.